All right, thank you for choosing the Minority Alliance organization meeting today. Today, we're just coming back from the holiday break, and it's a couple things that have occurred, politically, a couple realizations that are being realized. The end of the Senate race in Georgia, that was the swing, to see who would be in control of the Senate there. So with a couple things that have occurred and happened, Mark, really what I want to ask you, me and you have been having a discussion back and forth, over the holiday break about the sense of progression that we thought we had made. And, with certain outcomes of events that we're seeing, now on this end, that we're starting to realize, well, maybe we took a nick out of what we have going on, but, there should be a little bit more progression that we should be seeing, and what do we feel is expected, especially out of this next administration going forward?
Yeah, I would think that there are two lessons to be learned here. Number one is that we shouldn't be too overly cynical about where we are on that progress. There has been some progress. We've been able to see that as much like we saw in the 60s, where you would start to see a movement that people are attempting to galvanize, and you would see a brutal pushback against that movement. But the difference between that time and any time before it is that the brutality of the pushback against that movement was televised. Other people got a chance to see it. Normal, everyday Americans who have a good conscience about what they're seeing were able to act and were able to put some political voice to what they were seeing and what they felt, and it caused some change. And this movement here that we're seeing also, kind of ran along that same track where, we see these things now, we're seeing because of, the camera phones and because of Facebook lives and because of the body cams and things like that, that we're seeing, it's not just, a person gets killed and, we take a cop's word for it, or something happens and we just have to take someone's word for it. Now there's much more, and people got a chance to see much more. So as we saw a lot of the protests and everything unfold, we saw, there's so many people and there was so many different races that were out there with us and that were a part of it. And those people got a taste of that brutality as well. And those people got hurt, and those people, and again, it broadcast out, and it became a situation where more people became active and more people woke up and more people saw it. And it did move some things politically. If you would have asked me, 18 months ago, would we have seen the massive growth of, the protests that we saw and, the movement that we saw, and then some of the changes that we've seen politically, just in if you look at just the ethnic makeup of the cabinet that's getting ready to come in, like if you'd asked me a year and a half ago if that was even possible, I would have told you no. I would have been laughing because that would have sounded like a joke. So there's definitely some progress there. At the same time, what we also got a chance to see, and it'll go into our second subject a little bit later, but we got a chance to see that we still have a really, really long way to go. We are not nearly where, one would think that we would be into the second decade, the end of the second decade of the 21st century, when it comes to the what America is supposed to be and what we advertised ourselves to the world to be. We told the world that we were this shining beacon where all races and all religions could come together and build a nation built on ideals and laws. And we got a chance to find out how not true that really is, or how barely true that really is. So, kind of like I said before, what we realize as the movement is concerned is not only is there some progress, and that progress should be, there should be pride over that progress, and there should be, confidence over that progress that even more things can be done. But we have to realize that we're not at the end, and we're not even at the beginning of the end. We're at the end of the beginning. And now is the time to fortify that work that's been done so far, and people need to continue to push even farther. This isn't an exercise where we go ahead and we flex a little bit and then now it's time to rest. No, we have to continue to look, we have to continue to hold to account, we have to continue to push. And as other people come in and as this new administration comes in, we have to be prepared to hold them accountable like never before. And that may not even seem fair based on the last administration we just had, but we have to understand how bad things were, where we're coming from versus where we're trying to go, and how hard the people who would stop us from going there are going to fight to keep us from there, and use that as fuel to continue to push forward every day.
Yes, sir. And I mean, even like you said in that instance, as far as you know, we are just getting to the beginning of the end. In a sense, my my issue is especially with minorities ourselves is we got to continue to keep pressure and continue to stay, keep an eye on things that are going on, politically and things of that nature, and not fall off as we tend to do normally. It comes around that election cycle, and every we'll be lucky to get people excited every 2 years, but you can get everybody kind of excited every 4 years when it's a presidential election and things of that nature. And people come out and want to be activists and want to show support for different issues at that time. But we've got to continue to push for these things and changes for equality that we're asking for across the board. And as I always say, in every area, and especially, I know we had a discussion yesterday where I spoke on. It seems to me, you know, the group of minorities who are able to be in a different bracket and we're able to have a little more than our counterparts and things of that nature. It kind of does lean on us at this point to help one another, and that's why we put together this organization over the last year period. And we continue to push for the things that we do, but it's on all of us to, lend a hand to each other and lift one another up, to get to the point of equality that we're trying to reach. We can't sit here and count on, everyone else now that we've elected these officials, now that we got the Senate to swing back Democrat, um, that now everything's just going to happen automatically that we want it to happen. No, we got to continue to fight for these things, and as I said, continue to work with one another to see these things through. When it comes to the outcome, a couple of the cases, as in the Breonna Taylor case, with the cop, we saw that one wind out now. I believe the Tamir Rice one you were telling me about winded up now. With a lot of these issues that we're seeing and the way that they were handled on the back end, um, what does that go to say for the sense of progression when it comes to the judicial system and um, us actually seeing justice that we that was the illusion was given to us that we would see justice going forward. But is that the truth of what we've seen, or what is the issue on that end, if you would say so yourself?
Well, I would say first we have to realize that nothing yet has changed, right? What we have not seen, we've seen more attention, and there is more attention on these subjects. There's more eyes on it. There's more opinions on it. There's more people talking about it. But policy wise, has there been a change yet? And there hasn't been. Not a single law has changed. Not a single policy has changed. Not a single directive has changed in the training of police officers and the way that they're being monitored and the way that these things are going. So these decisions that we saw, and you mentioned Tamir Rice, you mentioned Breonna Taylor, and I would also throw Jacob Blake in there as well. What we've seen in those is the fact that the system that had been in place this whole time, it's still intact, right? No laws have changed yet. The first step has been achieved, right? Which is recognition, hey, something's wrong. And it's by more voices than just ours. Because again, we've been screaming in the dark against the wind for so long. And there have been so many people who didn't feel it, who didn't see it. And now there are so many more people, so many more points of influence from the online atmosphere, social media, and everything like that, to where there are more people who are going, wait, that's not right, and that's great. That again, that shows that there is a beginning of a shift in the way these things are going. But we have to be realistic and know that we're not there yet, and that policy has to follow the ideas. Right now, we are at the end of the idea phase. We recognize something's wrong. We see it. Everybody's talking about it. It's a thing. It's helped drive some of the political shift that we've seen. Now, what we're looking for is some policy to go behind the ideology. It's something that we'll be looking for out of this administration moving forward. It's something that we're going to be looking at and when it comes to state legislation moving forward. It's something that's going to be on the ticket when we vote next, because it was in the middle of this voting election cycle where we began to have this more massive awakening. So, although these cases, disappointing as they are, they're still a part of a system that has yet to change. It's just that we recognize that it is now time to change the tires on this truck so we can move it down a better road. So obviously, again, we got the new administration coming in, and we're going to need to hold them to account to that. We're also going to need to hold to account our individual state legislatures. For Breonna Taylor, we need to be looking at Kentucky. We need to be looking at their state legislature. We need to be looking at the state legislature of Wisconsin and see if things are going to be different, see if things are going to change. We need to see the type of voting records and the type of prosecutorial records of incoming attorneys general and incoming district attorneys and how they are and things like that, and begin to judge these things. One of the things I think we're going to need to adopt politically is to think small. We need to look more local than ever when it comes to what we're expecting from people, to what we're looking for what we're voting for, because that's where the change is really going to come. We can ask the big wigs in Washington to try and solve all those problems, but there are 50 states with thousands of counties, with hundreds of thousands of cities. And that all is not going to be changed with the stroke of one magic pen in Washington. Those are much smaller fights with much bigger stakes for the local people that live in those areas. So we have to recognize that that's where our fight is now. We looked big, we acted big. Now we have to look small.
Yes, sir. And in the sense of what you saying that, especially our next midterm elections will be the next elections coming about. And when you say, the biggest impact, and I mean, this is generally for any American period, the biggest impact that we can have, I think, heading into the next election, is people actually keeping that fire that's been there this past election season when it comes to, as you said, uh, the accountability factor, and making sure that all of the representatives that are representing us are actually standing up for the things that we are pushing for, as Americans in general. And it's tough to believe with I know it was a 50-50 split, you know, dang near 51-50 split, 49 split when you look at uh, the election and the people who voted for Biden and voted for Trump there. So now that we're seeing the way everything's played out, they were still trying to push that, the election might have been rigged, whatever the situation was on that end. At this point, we see our legislature actually spending time trying to go back and impeach Trump again. And I mean, especially with all the issues that we've discussed over last year, I know me and you had this conversation yesterday a bit, but, you know, is it right for them to spend the time, going and chasing an old, situation instead of let's move forward and continue to get this policy out. And I think you gave me a game plan last night, and basically that's what I kind of want to discuss is the game plan that you talked about. Well, if we do it now and it doesn't occur by a certain point, should we drop the issue and continue forward with letting Biden's administration carry out the objectives that they're trying to reach? Or how do we exactly attack this situation with our legislature spending time on something of this nature?
Yeah. So what I would say is that the situation that they're dealing with is both an old issue and it's now. That attack on the Capitol happened 7 days ago today. And we almost got a chance to witness something not only historic, but historically horrific. And that needs to be addressed. And there's also a situation where the paralysis of our politics has been locked up in a fight between policy and messaging. And one of the biggest issues about messaging being so powerful is that the message doesn't have to be true. We've been watching, all this time as people have taken different things, conspiracy theories, rumors, words, things like that, and given them as much power as actual policy. It's led us in a bad path. And for the first time in a long time, the armor of messaging has a chink in it. It's got a crack in the armor. So there's definitely a benefit to doing something like a second impeachment because number one, you keep him from coming back, and you keep him from coming back, and none of the ones that remain have the type of Svengali kind of Hitler like gravitas that brings all those people under the tent and continues to keep messaging as powerful as policy. So I think there is a benefit to that. However, you do not want that to get in the way of the policy movements that we need. So I had said, and I think I heard Representative Clyburn say this as well. It may be a good strategy to go ahead and get yourself an impeachment vote, but before you send it to a Senate trial, let's see what our Senate does. Let's give them some time. Let's actually put an administration in place. Let's confirm a cabinet. Let's get some policies in place. Let's get some stimulus checks out here so we can get people to stay home and try to get past this virus. Maybe we can get some things done with some of the reforms that we're looking for, and then make a decision on whether or not to go ahead and drop this or see if the temperature lowers enough to where you don't have to. And that gives us a chance to actually be able. We're not going to be able to move anything forward doing one thing at a time. We're going to have to be able to walk and chew gum. So if we have to be able to deal with the accountability of the things that have harmed us, while at the same time getting the type of political movement and the type of deal making, the type of unity that we're going to need to actually see things progress. Both are going to have to be handled at the same time because you're right. We are a 51-49 country right now. And we had a situation where the 49 was unwilling to accept that they weren't in control anymore. And there's an anger and there's a bitterness about that. And you're not going to be able to tamp that down with more messaging. You're dealing with masters of messaging in that regard. You're not going to be able to fight that. You're going to have to fight that with actual policy that actually helps those people, with actual movement and actual justice and actual bringing together what is needed to where we can move forward. And that's going to really be the thing. You cannot ignore what we just went through just for the sake of that movement. But at the same time, you cannot forsake the movement for just what happened. There has to be that level of accountability. And the reason that we supposedly have chosen from among the people to represent the people and speak for the people is because those people are supposed to be able to do that. They used to be able to do that, and they need to find whatever it takes to be able to do that again. This is a new century with new problems, and they're going to have to be able to catch up to that, or we need to recognize those people who are not there and who are not moving that, and they need to become the targets of primary elections. They need to become the targets of removal from certain committees and things like that so that we can move on, because we're going to have to recognize that just like the 51-49 of the public, there's a 51-49 of everything we do. That includes our politics. So now's the time to really hone in with all this noise being tamped down some, and there's gonna be a lull, and we can actually identify which side of the fence do our legislators stand on. Is it the 51% that needs to move forward? Is it the 49% that needs to get held back? And we'll have a chance to see that, and hopefully we'll have a chance to do something about that.
Now, even with that sense of, I know they've been talking about the censorship. Basically, I know Trump has been banned what off of YouTube now, Twitter, Facebook. I don't know, probably Instagram, the whole lot of them, all of social
All,
media.
they got them on all
And
of. They even got them on Pinterest. How they get you on Pinterest?
now, now my question in that regard, it does become, um, is there a necessity with the way we saw Trump use social media? Is there the necessity that has been discussed over the past few weeks of these social media giants actually being regulated and having to regulate things going posts that are showing on their page, especially with, as we saw, the rise of even the Black Lives Matter movement last year. A lot of that was social media based, and it's to say, it's a good and a bad in the way that social media could be used, and that's the clear compare and contrast in those two situations. So, how do you feel when it comes to that area of us still as civilians having free speech, but it being regulated to a certain degree? Or, how do we attack that?
Well, first things first, I don't believe, in the macro sense that a single thing has happened to any of our freedoms. No one's stopping you and I from talking right now. You and I could engage in all the hate speech we want, but it's up to us on how, and it's up to any other company we decide to try and broadcast it on, whether or not they want us. I run a business right now, and I have a policy of no shoes, no shirt, no service. You can't walk into my restaurant and then take your shirt off. I then have the ability to kick you out, and it is not an infringement on your freedom of expression. By all means, express yourself, just not here. So I don't believe that when you're dealing with private companies, you're not that infringement upon your speech is a really, really cheap way to scare somebody into backing down. Now I think that's separate from the conversation of whether that sort of technology should be regulated. I think we got our answer between 2016 and 2020. We have seen people be able to put out messages that are not true. We've seen people be able to put out messages that have been manipulated through memes and pictures and falsehoods to kind of get a public believing things that would be otherwise seen as insane. We've seen foreign actors be able to pose as one of us, going in and just saying vile things about people and becoming influencers. So I think there's definitely a need to kind of regulate that, because we have now seen the danger of it. We have seen people be able to use and weaponize this technology and use it against the people that were supposed to be using it for a different purpose. We've seen that repurposing over and over again across the board, and it's easy to blame the tech giant because they are the ones that cashed in, right? They're the faces of it. They're the billionaires who became billionaires by doing it, and they rub elbows with these high people up in government because that's just what rich people do, and so they become these easy targets for it. But at the same time, you know, what else what else were you going to do if you don't have something, if something doesn't have regulation to it? Someone's going to take advantage of that absence of regulation and use it to their advantage to either make money or to weaponize it for power. We have seen both when it comes to social media. So I believe that question has already been answered. What we're searching for right now is the proper justification and the proper way to square it out away in our own minds on how we should regulate it, and what should be the package in which we wrap up that regulation. We already know it has to be done. We have watched people. we've seen people take, I'll take, there's a family, I don't know if you remember the Sandy Hook shooting from a few years ago during the Obama years at that elementary school. There were people online who took that and they tried to make it a Second Amendment issue. Like, hey, this is a false flag operation, and Obama's using this, and they're going to take our guns away. And they used social media to broadcast some of the families who had lost their children as actors who were a part of some government plot to get your guns taken away. And those people were accosted. Those people had death threats. Those people, some in some cases, were assaulted, had to move, things like that. So we've been watching the weaponization of social media for almost as long as social media has been there. So I think we're past the point of having a conversation of should this sort of technology be regulated, and it now needs to become a conversation of how, because Pandora's box is already open. It's just a question of how bad do we want this to get before we do something about it. Because we got a chance, we got a glimpse last Wednesday of how bad it can get. That was plotted and planned on social media and spread. And look at how quiet things have been since a certain Twitter account got shut down. So the comparison and the examples are pretty obvious. It's just now a question of, well, how do we do that while still retaining what made this special in the first place?
Yes, sir. And I mean, even on that end, I know it's been what Facebook, it's a couple of social media giants and a couple other even bigger companies and things of that nature that are coming out and saying now they're going to stop donating towards elected officials. And especially with the last election season, we were discussing the everyday person, having a better opportunity when it comes to actually running for representation and running for office and things of that nature. uh, how do you feel like them taking big money, corporate money out of donations going towards, as I said, I know a couple companies stopped towards either party and a couple companies stopped towards the Republican Party. Uh, as far as the minority community and us seeing more elected officials to represent us actually have an opportunity, how does that change with them taking big money out of donation packs and things of that nature?
Well, I am very skeptical to see if they keep that up. I would love to see it. There have been a couple of political groups who have tried to take big money out of politics. It is the holy grail when it comes to progress. If that were to ever happen and you could actually get special interest from basically hijacking a politician as they're coming up through the ranks and their ideology is becoming a corporate ideology, we would be able to govern by ideals. What a novel concept that is, because the ideals have always been on our side. They're on the side of minorities, they're on the side of the working class, they're on the side of the lower class and the middle class economically. They always have been. But the goal in the original war has always been the haves versus the have nots, and the haves have always had the advantage. And they've been able to use all of their tools. They've been able to use the media, the messaging, race, and all other tools to be able to continue to not only keep what they have, but to drive the wedge bigger and bigger every time. In the 80s, it was trickle down economics and corporations are people too, and all these other things. And then you would see a corporate strategy become a political strategy. And we've seen that over and over and over again. And even now, the movement that we are seeing now, when it comes to the certain types of people who are talking right now, the certain people who are not, the certain people who have flipped their opinion, it has a lot to do with the movement of those dollars. We've been able to track the money and follow the ideals and follow the speech with the money for years. When's the last time you heard the word bribe? It's because you haven't needed to use that word because you've been able to wrap them up in campaign donations and fundraisers for all these years to be able to get these same things. Citizens United going through the Supreme Court and making it so that money was able to stay in politics. Well, now again, there's a crack in the armor for the first time. We have a crack. And the question is, can we capitalize on that? Can people capitalize on that? Can we hold the businesses to it? Can we hold the media to account, to hold the businesses to account to what they're saying right now? Because this is all great. Having a major corporation like Blue Cross Blue Shield say, "Hey, I am not donating to this person because this person denied the outcome of the election." That's awesome. You know what we need to do? We need to make sure at the end of 2021, when we're getting ready to head into 2022, that policy hasn't been reversed. And that's how you hold these things to account and how we can get this ball moving. Because if we can get the money out of the politics, again, we're left with nothing else but the words. We're left with nothing else but the ideals. And there is no argument against the things that would help people along. There is no argument against clean energy. There is no argument against a $15 minimum wage. There is no argument against the legalization of marijuana. There is none. If we're talking about nothing but ideals. So again, if you are looking for progress and you're looking for equality and you're looking for reforms of those systems, economically, justice, education, all those different things, getting money out of politics is the holy grail. It is the fight that needs to be won.
Now, I know, as I said, with us just now coming back from holiday and getting back into actually getting these meetings back together and things of that nature. Um, there was a story you called me yesterday, and it was like one of those things, real close to home, because we talk about these things week in and week out. And, we've specifically mentioned in this aspect, how the outcome of this situation, we've watched it, play out for many other people and, end horribly in a lot of the situations. So you called me last night. You were telling me the story, and I just wanted you to speak on it a little bit before we wrap up today. Because that's just the irony. That's the biggest thing I continue to tell you. Of what happened.
Yeah. Well, it starts off last evening. My wife and I are just we're enjoying our evening. We're actually we'd eaten dinner. We're putting food away, and there's a strange light coming through the window, and it's like just weird. Like, what is that? And then we start to hear like a voice on a PA, and somebody rattling off our address and our apartment number, and it's the police department. It's the Austin Police Department, and they're telling us on the PA to come out with our hands up. And I live on the second floor. We have a narrow staircase that goes down to our front door. So we walk downstairs, and obviously confused. Like, what is this about? We open the door, and there are multiple cop cars, and at least, as far as I could count, 8 police officers with guns pointed at me. And we're talking handguns, assault rifles, and there were actually 2 officers there were in a upper tier, almost like a sniper position, and they're all pointing guns at me. And I walk out first. My wife is behind me. They're yelling at us to keep our hands up. They're asking me to lift my shirt. They're asking me to turn around, and now I've got like my shirt over my head, and I'm turning around, and I have police officers on the left of me and police officers on the right of me, and both of them are telling me to come to them. The one on the right is telling me to come to the right. The one on the left is telling me to come to the left. And there's literally that moment where I felt this flash, like I'm about to get shot, because I am, here I am. They're in front of my house. There's all these guns. Like I literally see police shields, and I don't know what to do. I have them, yelling at me in both directions, and then finally, I guess whoever was in charge, it was on my left side, and he said, "Okay, there's more of us on this side. I want you to come over to this side right here," and they get me over to that side. They put me on my knees, they handcuff me, and they're asking us questions. Now, apparently, the The deal is, or what they claim it to be, is they had gotten a call of shots fired, and they weren't sure of the number. The number is very similar to my apartment number, and they weren't sure if it was 2202, if it was 220, if it was building 2, if it was building 22, whatever. And my building is very close to the front, but that was the thing. And so they got my wife, they did the same thing to her. They checked her, they put her in handcuffs. They have us out there, and then they're asking us about a name, somebody we don't know, because that's supposedly who the call was about. And it was the whole thing. And that they had to come. They asked us if they could check and make sure that there was nobody else in here, and it's just my wife and I here. But the whole ordeal took only a few minutes, but it felt like an eternity. Because again, how many times have we seen encounters like that? Encounters be less than that, where one or more people didn't survive the encounter. The hardest thing for me, just in my life, well, it was two things. Number one, the look on my wife's face when she didn't know whether or not she was about to watch her husband die. That is a look that I'm going to take to my grave, you know. And the second thing is, I know you and I have spoken about this, and I've spoken about this with many other people, where I said, if you want to know what the definition of privilege is, it's the fact that, the way we've lived our lives, my wife and I, we've lived our lives, there's no criminality whatsoever. I tell people all the time, I've done two things with my adult life: work and help people. That's it. That's the whole list. And none of that matters if somebody with a badge and a gun just makes a different decision. Whereas if I were another color, who knows? I could maybe run up in the Capitol and steal the Speaker of the House's lectern, or maybe I can beat a cop to death, or maybe I can trample a woman carrying a "Don't Tread on Me" flag, or maybe I can set off tear gas, or maybe I can set a fire, or maybe I can, spray pepper spray at a police officer. If I were a different color, maybe I get to go home after I shot two people in the street. Maybe someone would take me to Burger King if I killed nine people in a church. And those things flash to me because it is the reality of what it's like to be us. And I was committed to talk about that on this platform. And I was committed to talk about this wherever I get the chance to talk about this, because it drives home the fact that it doesn't matter where, and it doesn't matter who, and it doesn't matter when. We all, you know, have this specter hanging over us because we are minorities. Because as a black man, as a black woman in this country, that stigma and that kind of almost um, it's almost a bad thing to be born that way. The way that it's regulated, and the way that it's handled, and the way that it's done, and the fact that we are from 1865 to 2021 still trying to get on an even playing field against the words that they wrote in their own constitution, that all men were created equal. That is where I keep where my mind keeps going. And seeing this over and over again play out on the news and on social media, that's one thing, and having it visit your door is another. You and I, the Minority Alliance organization, where we've been out there and we've been talking about these things day in and day out, and we've talked about these things over and over again. We've profiled these things, and to have it visit home, it just, again, it shows you none of us are immune. We're all in this fight. This fight don't stop. And I would do everything I can, and I will talk to whoever I need to talk to. I'll continue to speak in a platform like this, and forever. I'll continue to speak out on these things because I can't get that look on my wife's face out of my head. I can't get the panic in my children's voices out of my head. I won't let that go. And regardless of whether it was a simple mistake from a dispatch, whether it was just a mix up, whatever the case may be, I will say that once they realized that we weren't the issue that they were looking for, they were nice to us. Outside the fact that they may have exposed us to COVID because they weren't wearing masks. That's another story that I will handle on another time. But besides those things, it doesn't change the fact that so many times encounters like that ended a different way. And so many encounters that were even less confrontational than that ended a different way. And we have to continue to push for that equality because the true measurement of equality is not how many black people become millionaires. It is not how many black people get roles in movies. It is not how many black people get into Congress. It is that that is no longer a fear my wife has to have when I leave home. It is that is not a fear that I have to have from my son or any of us have to have for our children or for our brothers or for our sisters or for our spouses or for anyone else. And until we have that, we do not have equality, no matter what anybody's messaging is. The reality is we are still fighting for that, and we will not stop until we get there.
Yes, sir. And as I said, it's just the irony in the situation after we spend so much time discussing these factors and how these occurrences play out and things of that nature is just is it bewilders me that that actually occurred. Um, Further than that, um, we're moving into this is our first meeting of 2021, and our keyword that we're going to continue to push, we'll probably tag it at the end of every video over the course of this year is action. That's our biggest thing that we're looking to see in every field as we've elected new representation in a lot of different areas to go into the House of Representatives, go into the Senate, and fight for these things that we discussed all over 2020. We're looking to actually see some of these things get done. So I know on me and your end, we will keep our eyes wide open on the accountability and making sure that these certain laws and policies that have been sitting on the table for over I would say it's a lot of them that were sitting on the table last year that we discussed, but they've been sitting on the table for years that should be getting passed now at this point. When you have the House, when you have the Senate, and when you have the executive branch all covered by one party who's promised to push these things through with policy and things of that nature. These are things that we're going to continue to fight for and continue to keep our eye on. Uh, we've brought back the Monday segments there. So I know people could go onto the YouTube page. We're getting the Twitter page back going on that end. Also, the group page there on Facebook, and look up a couple of information that we'll be passing along through there, according to the Monday segments and things of that nature. As we always say, if it's things that other people would like to, bring to our attention to discuss and things of that nature, we'll continue to move forward in those factors and actually sit and do research, if that be necessary to understand what entirely is going on and that extent. Is there anything else, Mark? I know that you had us going into 2021 on this end, uh, starting back up.
Absolutely. 2020 is over, right? But all of the things that 2020 exposed and all the fights that 2020 brought us are not over. We're still dealing with COVID, 30,000 people in the first 12 days of this year have already lost their lives. We still have a lot of political strife out there. We still are looking for a lot of different things that 2020 exposed to, become a reality here in 2021. That doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by wishing for it. Action is going to be the word of the year, because as we go through this year, it is not enough to simply put out the messaging and talk about it. It's time for the actions to meet the words. What I would say to the group and anybody that comes across this and hears this is that um, the emotions that you feel as a minority or as anyone associated with minorities and all the different things that are going on in our world, you should feel what you feel. You should take those feelings and mold them into a positive action every single day. Every day, you need to do something for yourself. You need to do something for somebody else. We need to reach out to one another. We need to talk to one another. We need to keep one another safe. And we need to use this year and what we went through in 2020 as a year to take action towards that better tomorrow and towards better communication, towards putting away some of the pettier differences and making sure that we remove the condescending voices that would keep us from having that level of progress. Now is the time more than ever where we have a chance to actually move forward and mold some of the setbacks and some of the pain into some positive action. I've been saying for months now, that it is no longer a question of if you are your brother's keeper, you are. It's just a question of what will you do with that. And it is a time for action. So I would close this up today by saying that everyone here, everyone, in this grand experiment of ours is a part of that change and a part of that progress. You take care of yourselves, you take care of each other. Let's get past COVID by doing what we need to do. Let's get past the politics by doing what we need to do. And let's stop having such small minded conversations and move toward the big ones, because they're there, they're waiting for us. And the change that we want, we chink the armor. Now it's time to break it open wide.
All right, good enough. Thank you again, Mark. And of course, as always, thank everybody for, listening, whether it's on the YouTube platform, the Facebook profile, or the Audi's platform that we have now. Uh, the things that we're going to continue to push for are the same things that we originally set out to get done. And I mean, of course, last year our biggest thing was, as I said, vote. And this year our biggest key term will be action. Going forward and actually seeing things through.
All right, everybody take care. We'll see you all next week. Take care of each other.